Hi, Tiffany.
Hello.
Hi, Tiffany.
Hello. Nice to see everyone this evening.
Good to see you. Except I'm not seeing everyone. Which button do I need to push?
I don't think it's on gallery view just yet, Pablo.
Maybe that's a problem. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque's Board of Trustees regular meeting. I am Mayor Donald T. Lopez. The time is 7 p.m. To remain in compliance with the state of New Mexico's amended public health order dated February the 26th, 2021, the Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque is conducting this meeting through Zoom video conferencing and is live streaming on its website and Facebook page. And participants also have the ability to join telephonically. Instructions on how to participate in this meeting have been posted on the village website. At this time, I'm going to call the roll. Trustee Rael,
Here.
Trustee Lewis, present. Trustee Pacheco,
Here.
Trustee Riccabini.
Here.
Thank you. Item number 3 is approval of the agenda. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I move approval of the,
I'll second.
Thank you. Got my second. I'm going to call for the question. I'm going to call for the roll call vote. Trustee Rael,
Yes.
Trustee Lewis,
Yes.
trustee Pacheco,
Yes.
trustee Riccobeni.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move to item 4 now, which is the public comment period. Participants may address the Board of Trustees to comment on issues, problems, or successes on topics that do not appear elsewhere on the agenda. Submitted written comments that were sent to the clerk prior to the meeting will now be read. Danielle, did we receive any comments?
Good evening, Mayor and trustees. No, sir, I received no written comments this evening, nor anyone who signed up previous to this meeting for speaking under the public comment period.
Thank you, Danielle. It is now my responsibility to ask, is there anyone on this call who wishes to speak that did not register prior to the meeting? If so, please use the raise your hand button. We will call on each individual one at a time. So I'm going to let Kiko give him a minute to see if there's anybody out there that wants to do this.
I have a hand raised, stand by.
Thank you. Is that person ready to speak, Kiko?
Yes, Mr. Copeland, did you have a public comment? I know we have you down to speak later for in opposition to an applicant. Is that why you raised your hand now? That might come later.
Okay, yeah, I did do that. And yeah, I made a mistake on that. Sorry about that.
Don't worry. Is there anybody else on the call who wishes to speak that did not register prior to the meeting? Is there anybody else, Kiko?
I have no other hands raised.
Thank you. Item 5 is the next item on the agenda. It is presentations. 5A is my update on the emergency declaration. As mayor, I am making the following statement regarding the state of New Mexico's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. While cases of COVID-19 are declining in the state of New Mexico and in Bernalillo County, and the availability of COVID-19 vaccines are increasing throughout the state, the virus and new variants continue to affect our community. As such, I am declaring continued adherence with Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's public health order, Executive Order 2020-004, declaring a state of public health emergency and invoking the powers by the All Hazard Emergency Management Act, New Mexico Statute Annotated 1978, subsections 12-10-1 through 12-10-10, and all subsequent extensions. This means that the village will allow events, trainings, and meetings to occur so long as they do not exceed the gathering limits imposed by Order 2020-004. To be sure, this does not mean that the village and its residents should become complacent. I encourage behavior that limits the spread of the virus, such as mask wearing and maintaining social distancing. In addition, Village Hall will remain closed to the public and open only for special circumstances. Village staff will be available by appointment only and are urged to continue working from home. This update is hereby in effect beginning today, March 10th, 2021, and will remain in effect for as long as that of Executive Order 2020-004 and all extensions of that order. I'm ready to move on to item B unless there's a question. Item B, 5B, is Mr. Chad Reniker with Palindrome Communities, an update on the Village Center. Chad, are you on?
Chad, if you are on under a different name, could you use the raise your hand function so I could allow you in?
Can you see me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Chad. Please
Hi there.
state your name and address.
This is Chad Reniker from 412 Northwest Fifth Avenue, Portland, Oregon.
Please proceed.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. Sorry for that. I'm coming in under my wife's email address, so sorry
okay.
about that. So I thought I would give just a brief update verbally on what's happening with the Village Center, and I apologize. I didn't get a hold of Ann in time to have exhibits submitted that we could look at, but I thought we could at least talk about the status of some of the phases on the Village Center. So as some of you may recall, we've broken the Village Center into 6 different parcels. 3 parcels along the northern portion that face Asuna, and then 6 parcels that are to the south of that. And our time frame for those was our first priority in terms of our timeline were phases 1, 2, and 3, which were the multifamily units that are the border Asuna. So I'm happy to report that our first phase of that, which is actually parcel 3, which is our senior housing component, we were able to make our application submission to New Mexico Mortgage Finance Authority on January the 15th with a 60-unit affordable senior project. So that if people are familiar with that process, that, there's an application that's submitted, it's quite competitive. You self-score your application, and then the MFA will publish your score relative to what the other projects have self-scored their projects. And I was pleased to see that our scoring is in the top echelon. It's favorable for being so competitive. I'm more optimistic than I would normally be for the submittal of that. So we will find out on the funding for that project probably in May, possibly June is when the MFA will make those announcements. We are working with the architectural firm of Decker Parrish Sabatini on the design for that particular project. And I won't go into a lot of details. Hopefully next month's trustee meeting, I'll actually have some conceptual images that I can share with everyone to see what we're doing there. The other 2 phases, which are to the northwest portion of that the northern part of the Village Center, are more multifamily. That's going to be approximately 150 units of housing. Decker Parrish Sabatini is also the architect on that phase. We're not as far along in our design there. We're still in the conceptual phase, but that will be 2 buildings that will be centered around kind of a central courtyard that will have access from the corner of 4th and Asuna for pedestrians to come through, a portal into the center area, and then the pedestrian path will continue on to get what we're calling parcel 4, which is in the center of the project, which is kind of the exciting part of the whole center as far as I'm concerned, which is our economic development, hospitality, brew pub, village plaza, micro restaurant. I mean, this is the sizzle for the whole development. That project is moved forward faster than we had planned. We had originally anticipated for that to be a 2024 project, but because of some of the synergy of doing that project in conjunction with the others, some of the road work that needs to be built for the entire master plan, we've moved forward with the design work on that phase. That's the phase, as you may recall, that actually has the village farm, it has the amphitheater, it has the incubator spaces for our economic development. It's a very, very cool project. We're working with the architectural firm Design Plus. That's the firm that we used for our El Vado redevelopment and our Monterey Motel, very exciting projects in Albuquerque, and we're actually using them on our current Imperial Inn redevelopment there as well. So you can rest assured we're going to get a very creative and a very exciting project there. It's going to be a 3-story building. The top 2 floors are going to be guest rooms, boutique guest rooms that will be built in conjunction with all of the activity that will be on the first floor, which was with our incubator space. We're also working with the New Mexico Brewers Guild to provide them with a new home. The brewery equipment that we will be putting in our brew pub will be used for educational purposes with the Brewers Guild. So there's a lot of really collaborative and really cool programs that are in the works for that project. The other 2 phases, which would be the southwestern and the southeastern corners of the development, they're further out. We don't have, we're still just working on the master plan, utility site work, civil work on the overall site. Those will come later. So that's a quick update. And again, I apologize. I wish I had something more sexy to show you online, but we'll do that next month for sure.
Okay, Chad, this is Mayor Lopez. I do have a quick question for you. During the planning of all of this, there was some discussion of a small retail grocery type outfit. Is that still possible?
Yes, it's not only possible, it's still planned. That is for what we're calling phase 6. So that's on the that's on the phase that abuts 4th Avenue or 4th Street, I
Okay.
should say. And it's
Right.
right, it's located right above the current dance studio.
Okay. Do any of the trustees have questions or something you want to bring up at this time? Sandra, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just curious, you said that the center part is coming together a little quicker than you had anticipated. Did you kind of put a time frame on that, or did I
I
miss
did.
it?
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Yes, we had in the development agreement, and I'm sorry, I'm at home, so I don't have the development agreement in front of me with the specific timelines, but the development agreement actually has specific benchmarks that we must hit that include, architectural design work, financing, construction start, construction completion, et cetera. And the hotel economic development center was not we're probably a year to 2 years ahead of when we were required to start that development. As I've said from the very beginning, the timeframes that are in the development agreement are not what I intend to do. They're just sort of worst case scenarios, I suppose. And so that component is an important one for me because it is really what's going to make all of the other pieces of the development hum. It's sort of the focal point. So I'm anxious to do that one sooner. And a lot of it comes down to money and financing, which is kind of the reason why we're starting it sooner.
Very good.
Great, thank you.
Do any of the other members of the governing body have a question that you would like to ask Chad at this time? Chad, I really appreciate your forthrightness and willing to speak tonight on short notice. And
My
if you
pleasure.
would like to be placed on next month's agenda, let us know as soon as possible. And if you have something to show, that would be nice. That would be great.
Yeah,
So we
I'll bring
really
it.
appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank
I'm
you
going to
all.
move to item 6, which is the consent agenda. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Item A is the minutes of the February 10th, 2021 regular meeting. I need a motion to approve the minutes.
I move approval of the consent agenda, but I'd like to make a correction.
Yes,
It's on page 19 of 160. It's on line number 545. It's referring to odor control. It should be odor control.
okay,
And
we'll
that's
make
all.
that correct. Okay, I need a second.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Rael,
Yes,
trustee Lewis,
Yes.
trustee Pacheco,
Yes,
trustee Riccobeni.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 7 are the departmental reports. The departmental reports are included in the packet and reflect activities for the period listed in each report. If the governing body has questions for staff regarding the reports, We will have each trustee ask all their questions before we move to the next trustee. Let me start with trustee Rael.
Yes, I have a couple of things. I'd like to say I'm very pleased with the savings you're going to get. A local bank rather than the Bank of America. Savings of up to around $10,000 is really nice.
You bet.
Let's see. Also, on page 26, Administrator Ann Simon is referring to the agritourism. And how are you going to bring the agriculture and the tourism together that'll be tied into the businesses on 4th Street?
Ann?
And also, I would like to be on the mailing list for the Chimp report, if you can, please.
Oh, excellent. Yes, Mayor and Trustee Rael and trustees. We are working through the Agri-Futures Committee, which is tying together the notion of agritourism with the businesses in Los Ranchos. So what we're doing is we are trying to assess what are the businesses that could have sort of an agritourism tie, like V Hills Saddles, Dan's Boots, the El Camino Motel, some of these really iconic, wonderful establishments that we have in the village, and tie them with perhaps a triptych that would help chart people through the village. We also have had a chance to talk to the owner of El Camino Motel to talk about ways to integrate new visitorship at the hotel, and perhaps introduce sort of a concierge service that brings in visitors and helps them get back out into the village, to take a trip down in a acequia, or to look for migratory birds, that kind of thing. So we are trying to integrate all of the activities at the Agri-Nature Center with the commercial sector in ways that has agriculture as the glue. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes, it does make sense. Thank you. I just wanted to see how it was going to all tie in. So thanks. And if you will put me on that list for the Chimp report, please.
Okay, trustee Lewis.
That all, trustee Rayo? I guess so.
Yes, that's all.
Okay. My first question is for Tiffany Justice. I was just, in her report, she talks about continuing work on ordinance for short-term rentals. And I was wondering, Tiffany, if you could bring us up to speed with where you're at there.
Yes, trustee Lewis, mayor, trustees. Right now, a draft ordinance, a draft application, and a draft resolution that has a cap on the total number of permits are at Attorney Winter's office being reviewed. I anticipate that we're going to go back and forth a bit with the revisions to make sure they're all sound before we bring it before the trustees.
Thank you. My next questions are for Maria. Good evening, Maria.
Hello.
My first one's sort of my standard question. Where are we at with NMDOT? I mean, it's a shame I have to ask this every month, but.
Mayor,
Okay.
Trustee Lewis, the mayor and I were just speaking about this morning, and I actually have a little bit of news. NMDOT District 3 has hired a local government coordinator to replace the loss right after our walkthrough. So we're hoping that moves things along rather quickly. I did have an opportunity to speak with staff at NMDOT, and they say that we're still on a priority. But the only engineer they have available who's working on punch list items to the degree that ours may require engineering is Angelo Rankin, and he is just a bit overwhelmed at the moment. But we do expect some movement there. Mayor and I were talking this morning about, we now have the state road fund money that we are utilizing now in preliminary engineering and design on phase 2. So we're kind of looking at the balance in phase 1, which we cannot touch until we close that phase out. We're kind of looking at it as a reserve for the time when we have expended all of our road fund money, which, by the way, we've received every penny of it, almost $500,000. But that money doesn't expire until 2023. So we don't have any fear there. The only thing that's hanging over us is the fact that the project just is not closed.
Right.
We haven't had a resolution on the ADA accessibility issues primarily. Those are the big things. And I mean, I'm sorry, I know that it's frustrating every month to ask the same question, but we have these discussions on a weekly basis, and I'm sorry to report that's just where we're at, Trustee.
Thank you, Maria. So the biggest issues out there that you see are the disabilities and the handicap issues on some of the curbing and some of the parking, or?
Mayor, Trustee Lewis, the issues that we have are accessibility primarily in the promenade. We have an accessibility issue, and those are the things that we know DOT is going to hold us to.
Right.
There's some other things that we addressed and asked for a pass on, if you will, but we know that some of the issues with the ramp and the stairs and some of the furniture in the promenade, they are going to have to be mitigated.
Okay.
There is an issue throughout the project and all of the stamped concrete with the pattern that's pressed into it possibly being considered a hazard for wheelchairs. That's the really big one that we're looking at, because that's project wide.
Okay.
Other things, I don't think they're going to press us on, but we have addressed every concern they had and provided what we believe are fixes for all of the issues. We just need them to approve them.
Okay, thank you, Maria. This is sort of your lucky night. I seem to have a number of questions for you. My next question is, you mentioned that you are participating in the regional transportation planning discussions. Can you go into a little more detail on that?
Mayor, Trustee Lewis, we're members of Mid-Region Council of Governments, Mr. Cog, and we participate in all of the transportation planning programs. I'm your representative on the TPTG, and Tiffany is your representative on TCC with me as alternate.
Could
And
you
it's
explain what that
transportation
means?
board.
Yeah,
Certainly, these are all coordinating meetings to develop the transportation improvement program and plan throughout the metropolitan area. So
okay,
it is
the whole area.
how it's the entire metropolitan area, and it is how federal transportation monies are distributed in our region. As participating members, we compete for and get our projects into the transportation improvement plan, and we go through a selection process when federal funds or any special funds like the stimulus COVID relief money that's just coming down, they're distributed through the transportation improvement program. So we have representatives on the various committees that develop these plans. And we all sort of jockey for our position and try to secure as much money as we can out of the regional pool for the Village of Los Ranchos.
Thank you. My next question is, can you just tell us a little bit about how you're coming along on the Agri Nature Center improvements and the site utilization plans?
Mayor, Trustee Lewis, actually our committee has narrowed down to myself and Fergus, Sabrina, and Knight Seavey of Insight Works. And we are now, we've set what our improvement priorities are based on the level of funding we have. And at this point in time, the priority is to get a survey of the property, and not just boundaries, but also utilization of and all aspects of operation on the Agri-Nature Center site, building as well as land use, so that we can ensure that the projects, the capital improvements, the actual improvements, physical improvements to the building, to the roadways, to any infrastructure, fits within an overall utilization plan of the property.
Thank you, Maria.
Certainly.
And then I have one more thing on page 33, under roadway improvement project. I wanted to be like Pablo tonight. So the funding is for Los Ranchos. The end's been left out of the word. So I just wanted to make sure we make that correction.
Right. Take care of that.
Thank you, Maria. You were more than up to the task of my questions. I appreciate it.
Great. Okay.
Question, I have a couple more, Mayor, sorry.
Sure, go right ahead.
Fred, it's your turn in the hot seat. In your report, you talk about citizens' issues, residents' concerns, and work with BCSO. Are there any concerns that should be brought up before us that we just should be aware of, or is it just minor things out there?
Trustee Lewis, Mayor, and trustees, I think they're mostly the minor issues. I think one that you may want to be aware of is we've had several requests for speed humps or speed bumps within several residential roads and stuff, Guadalupe Trail and on Ranchitos. And so I think we want to look at that and come up with some type of plan. The speed boards work fine, but I think I'll use Guadalupe Trail for an example. We're still getting a lot of traffic off of 4th Street that is going around that. And I think in certain areas, and Keen and I have talked about this, that Guadalupe Trail in certain areas would be a prime spot to put a couple of those speed bumps to get the people back on 4th Street. And I think that's really the thing that you might be seeing coming up in the near future. The rest of them are, some minor speeding issues or code enforcement issues that everybody's working on a daily basis. And I will tell you that I've had some very good conversations with Captain Romero from the SO on a couple of other issues where he immediately assigns some detectives or investigators or whatever to start following up on the issues that are being brought up by the citizens. So they've just been very, very responsive.
Great, thank you, Fred. The last thing I have to say is I just wanted to thank Fergus. All I have to say, Fergus, is thank you very much for all you've done, and we're gonna miss you. That's all I have, Mayor.
I appreciate that. And of course, I echo your thank you to Fergus. We're all going to miss him. Okay, Trustee Pacheco, go ahead.
Okay, first couple of questions for Administrator Simon. With regard to the village franchise agreements, are we anticipating that the fees will be raised, and is it going to be, do you know, with regard to impacting our budget, is it going to be something that will be surprising to us, or do you have any idea about that?
Mayor and Trustee Pacheco, I don't imagine that we're going to see too much of an increase. We are working with P&M and they have offered to increase their fees to us. So we'll see a little bit more from P&M. We are negotiating with the Water Utility Authority, and theirs is pretty high, but it's not any different than what they've been paying us. So no, I don't anticipate a lot of increase.
Okay,
Thank
you. And then with regard again to the business economic development, you indicate that there was a survey, and I'm just curious when those results will be available.
Mayor Trustee Pacheco, the survey on the definition of agritourism, is
Yes.
that what you're referring to?
Mhm.
That is something that the table on economic development and agritourism from the AgriFutures Committee is working on. So I don't know that we've had a formal release of the survey. I did put it in the MailChimp and I haven't gotten any specific comments, but hope to keep asking our business community so we get that feedback loop.
Thank you. And then lastly, I just want to echo to Fergus that we're going to miss you, and thank you for everything that you've done, and don't go too far away. Hope we still get to see you. And that's all my comments, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Tom Riccobeni, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I want to mention to Ann, I love the accommodating lifestyle, leisure, health, rejuvenation, ag and nature. That's just a great thing to be saying. And if that's what our businesses are going to market themselves at, I think that's great. So I wanted to just mention that. To Fergus, we're going to miss you, man. That's an ouch. And so I hope that you're leaving with lots of great notes for us, and so we can carry on without you. I'm sure that you won't go away completely at the end of the day, though. So let's see. Other than that, with the for Maria, is there a deadline that NMDOT needs to have, or are they just kind of whatever they get it done kind of deal, and so we have to just kind of wait?
Mayor, Trustee Riccobeni, we kind of have to wait. We're a little bit held hostage to them. The money doesn't expire until the end of 2023. If it were closer to expiring, I believe there would be a greater urgency on their part. But and I don't know what else to say about that. They do not have a deadline to respond to us.
Okay, and so I noticed that we're combining the other smaller items with our contractor to be done at the same time. So that could be a long time from now, potentially then, before we get those pieces taken care of as well.
Mayor, Trustee Riccobeni, minor things, some of the major things are still underway. There are some welding activities, a large section of rail that we removed on private property at the El Camino Motel that'll be put in. It's the minor things that would probably be disrupted if we should have to make major modifications to concrete and such due to the ADA issues we have. So it's only things like that that are being delayed, sir.
Understand. That clarifies that. Thank you very much, Maria. I appreciate that. And that's it, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item 8 is financial business. Item A is discussion and approval of the cash report for February 21, 2021. Treasurer Will Fisher, I noticed that you're on. Can you provide us your comments on the cash report? And then I've got something to say about Tammy Silva.
Will, you are muted,
Go ahead and unmute, Will.
or we can't hear you either way. Yeah, we cannot hear you.
Okay, Will, would you like to just call in, Will? Why don't you just call in?
It looks like he's got his record on, by the way.
While Will is getting adjusted to call in, let me give you an update on Tammy Silva. On Monday morning at 6:30 a.m., she was coming into work as she does several times a week, very early. She drops her young daughter off at her mother's home. She was up in the far Northeast Heights, traveling on one of the roads at 30, 35 miles per hour, and she was T-boned by a vehicle that ran a red light. It was a really bad accident, but luckily she was not hurt seriously, but she's banged up and she has a little bit of pain in her chest. And when I spoke to her this morning, she advised me that she was very, very tired and would not be able to attend tonight's meeting to answer questions. But if any of the trustees have a question that she might be able to answer, Danielle is going to take the notes, and Tammy will go ahead and provide an answer to all of us on the specific question, whatever it is. So that's where Tammy Silva is. I'm really happy that she wasn't hurt any more badly than what happened. That was a serious accident. Could have been much worse. So Will, are you able to get on? Okay, go ahead.
Hi, all. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. Sorry about that. I guess my computer's being weird. I apologize. So before you should have the cash report for February. The ending balance for February was $6,510,297.29, which is an increase of $863,189.12 for the month. Year-to-date excess of revenues over expenditures was or is $1,332,016.53. Since Tammy's here, and I apologize, you got to suffer through me, and I really hope Tammy's okay. A couple of unusual or significant events that I could point out is remember last month we didn't get the January GRTs in time, but we got them in February, so it looks like a really big boon for the month. But it's just 2 months in February, and then in a $6,000 payment really for the water from the Agri-Nature Center, and then lastly on the NMDOT $482,687 for the from the state infrastructure grant. But that's what I know.
Thank you, Will. Thank you very much. Does the Board of Trustees have, well, I do, let me move this way. I do need a motion to approve the cash report.
I make a motion to approve the cash report.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Now, is there any discussion or questions about the cash report?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Our finances look like they're in great shape, and I'm excited. But I was going to ask Tammy tonight, and if she could give us a breakdown, how much, when you look at the revenue we have and the cash we have, how much of it is a discretionary income, and how much is committed funds, and to what are they committed to? So
We'll make sure that Tammy
can, but I know there's a lot of that money's committed to different things. And so I just wanted to have her sort of clarify the breakdowns for us and where we are with our own discretionary bank.
And we'll take care of that, Trustee Lewis. Okay, is there any other discussion on the cash report? Okay, I'm going to call for the question. I'm going to call for the roll call vote. Trustee Rael.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Riccobeni.
Yes.
Okay, item 9 is public hearings. 9A is ZMA 21-02, a request by Jerome Maldonado for a zone map amendment to change 100 feet of R2 zoning to C1 zoning as allowed by section 9.2.25 parentheses E parentheses 8 for a property in the C1 and R2 zone in the 4th Street character area. The property is located at 7216 4th Street Northwest and is legally known as tract 157A, as shown on map number 27 of the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District, projected section 21, Township 11 North, Range 3 East, New Mexico Principal Meridian, Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, New Mexico. The property contains 1.38 acres or less. At this time, I want to say that those speaking will be called upon and will be sworn in individually at their respective times. So, and Ms. Winter will swear in Director Justice. Can you swear her in at this time, Ms. Winter?
I can. Tiffany, are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Oh, there you are. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Director Justice, please present the zone map amendment.
Mayor, trustees, just to briefly go over the project, this property is a dual zoned property with the front portion that abuts 4th Street, zoned C1, and the back portion that abuts the Chamizal lateral, zoned R2. The C1 zone extends 300 feet from 4th Street at this property, and the remaining 400 feet east of it is zoned R2. And the request would be to extend the C1 zone by 100 feet, making about 0.76 acres zone C1 and about 0.62 acres zoned R2. The property has commercial buildings at the front in the commercial portion, and there is parking in the rear commercial portion, which is about midway through the property. The back portion, zoned residential, is mostly vacant, except for some parked vehicles and potential construction or landscaping material, which is included in your packet. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted 6-0 to forward a recommendation of denial. One of the primary factors in that decision was that the applicant was not present at last month's Planning and Zoning meeting. In 2015, a zone change application for this property was recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission and denied by the board. That original application was for use as a contractor's yard, and if the zone change was approved, they would have been required to obtain a conditional use for a contractor's yard. The applicant hasn't expressed that this zone change would be for a contractor's yard. The assumption for the use is that the existing materials and equipment in the residential portion would remain there, as the request for the zone changes for additional commercial parking and equipment storage. The property and the surrounding properties are in the 4th Street character area. In terms of land use, the property to the west and the properties to the north and south, the front portions are zoned commercial and the back portions are zoned residential. On the east side, on the other side of the lateral, is Bernalillo County, and it's zoned agricultural, but there's a special use for a contractor's yard. In terms of the analysis, there's a couple things I'll be going over. First is the contractor's yard versus the parking lot. Our definitions essentially for them. The zone change is for commercial parking and equipment storage, and outdoor equipment storage and materials, which isn't specified in the application, but we could see that in the photos of the property, constitute a contractor's yard. The zone change could be used for both a parking lot and a contractor's yard, but if the zone change is approved, a conditional use would be required for the contractor's yard portion of it. For the zone change, there are 5 guidelines that we follow for the zone change. The first is that NMSA section 3-21-5 A and B apply to this zone map amendment application and are met. A, I'll refer to a little bit later for the reference in the master plan. For B, it talks about the character of the area. As I mentioned earlier, this property is in the 4th Street character area, and that character area has a combination of residential and commercial properties and uses. And much of the east side of 4th Street is zoned C1 for the front 300 feet, and behind that zoned residential. So a lot of these properties are zoned, are dual zoned, like this property currently is. And most of the properties abutting the Chamizal lateral are zoned residential or special use for residential purposes like a mobile home park. And granting of the C1 zone by 100 feet would still retain this residential use along the lateral, and the size of the R2 zoning, about 0.62 acres, would still allow for a residential home per, I guess, the setbacks and the lot area requirements for development. For the second guideline, there should be public interest in changing the zone. There is and there is not public interest in changing the zone. We received comments both in favor of and in opposition to the application at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Most comments were in opposition. We have one comment, one written comment that's attached in your packet. In terms of just general public interest, 4th Street is the sole commercial corridor of the village, and to revitalize it, the village has invested in improvements to the public infrastructure to encourage development along the corridor. Expansion of the C1 zone along 4th Street allows for a wider variety of development, including commercial mixed use and higher density residential. There's a concern that with the C1 zone, the property owner could do anything permissive or conditional in that zone and not necessarily follow through with what they say they will do as part of this application, since that would be part of a separate application for a site development plan. The merits of the zone change do need to be warranted on its own. The third guideline is that the Board of Trustees will not spot zone for the private interest of the owner or the applicant. This would not be the case since the front portion of the property is already zone C1 and there are surrounding uses that are C1, surrounding properties that are zone C1. For the fourth guideline, the application for a zone change should be warranted. In this case, the application is not warranted. The purpose of the zone change is for parking and equipment storage. The applicant didn't identify constraints for the current C1 zoning that explain why the existing zoning is not sufficient for additional parking or equipment storage. And based on a rough estimate of the built square footage and the parking requirements for our uses, there appear to be 16 parking spaces that meet our requirements, and that's already in the existing C1 portion. Since the village's parking requirements are met, an extension of the C1 zone for parking doesn't appear to be warranted. The fifth guideline is that support for the zone change is within the 2035 master plan. There is support for the zone change within the overall village goals, village form goal, and economic development goal sections. And so with that, the department recommends the board deny ZMA 21-02, a request for a zone map amendment for 100 feet of R2 zoning to C1 zoning as allowed by section 9.2.25 E8 for a property in the C1 and R2 zone in the 4th Street character area with the following findings. The lot is dual zoned C1 and R2 in the 4th Street character area. NMSA section 3-21-5A and B apply to this zone map amendment application and are met. There is and is not public interest in changing the zone, as the village received both comments in favor and in opposition. The application would not be considered spot zoning for the private interest of the owner or the applicant. The application for the zone change is not warranted as is for parking, which already meets the minimum requirement, and outdoor equipment storage. The configuration of the lot does not allow for additional parking, and the addition of outdoor storage area could remove existing parking for the existing C1 area. However, the inability to expand or have these uses is not a cause for a zone change. However, should the board decide that this application is warranted and approve it, this finding will be changed. The zone map amendment is also supported in the 2035 master plan. No application to amend the zoning for this property has been filed within the last 12 months, and public notice requirements have been met. And I'll stand for any questions.
We'll get to questions in a moment, Tiffany. Thank you. The applicant will now be given the opportunity to speak on the request. I believe Jerome Maldonado is on this call. Correct?
Yes, stand by.
Good evening.
Yes, I'm going to have Miss Attorney of the Village, Miss Winter, please swear in Mr. Maldonado.
Mr. Maldonado, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Jerome Maldonado, 436 Ariano Lane.
Okay, go ahead and tell us what you want to tell us to convince the board to approve your application.
We had went in for a zone change a couple years back, and they pushed us forward to the 300 feet, which we complied in. And it was brought to our attention that there was a property on Roll that had gotten approval for 400 feet. And so it was recommended by Tiffany to come in, and it'd probably be a good time to request that same request. One of the things is that 300 feet, it allows for the front end that's zone C1 to be able to comply with parking. But we have DNL Plumbing, which has been a tenant there prior to our ownership in 2012. They've been there since 1994. And so with his equipment and his business and his lease, it takes up all the parking and it takes up what we need for the back area. Now, I happen to own the landscape company that's back there. We've owned it since 1995. We were in another spot prior to buying this property in 2012. Now, the reason we bought this property in 2012 is because we bought it from the owners of Plaster Inc., who had been doing business there since the 80s. They had utilized the property as a construction yard since the 80s. And when we went in for the zone change last time, they said that there was a gap in use, which we proved that there wasn't. Wade and Bluer, who had owned the property, had utilized it. Now, Wade did get sick, but they were still operating in there, just at a much less use and capacity than they were when they sold the property, but they were still utilizing it. The company Bluer was there, in fact, he still leases from us to this day. And he stores some of his wood and carpentry materials there. And so when we bought the property in 2012, we took ownership and use of the entire property, even in the R1 section, which we were trying to get full C1 zoning for the entire lot all the way back. Now, after we were denied that request about 2 years ago, we were required to pull everything up within that 300 feet, which it works, but we have to still pull vehicles to the back and park them back there. The equipment and all the materials have been pulled forward, although we still park things in the back for security purposes. There's some utility trailers that DNL Plumbing has owned and has had parked back there since the 90s. They still reside in the same place that they've resided for many, many years. And it's a lot easier for parking for the front end of the C1, the beauty salon and the day spa that's up there, to be able to have their clients park in the back without all of the landscaping materials, the equipment and everything. That extra 100 feet will give us the ability to have parking for the construction vehicles and the construction equipment without interfering with the C1 zoning and everything that goes on with the leasing from the front end of that property. And so we felt this was a good time, an adequate time, since they just gave approval to one of the other properties just on roll, just a couple lots over, to request that extra 100 feet, as opposed to trying to get the whole zoning for the entire lot, which will put us in better compliance and allow us the usable space that we've always needed, but we could definitely take advantage of at this point in time.
Thank you, Jerome. And we'll get to questions for you a little bit later. At this time, is there anyone on this call wishing to speak in favor of this matter? If so, please use the raise your hand button. Was there anyone, Kiko?
I am not seeing any hands raised.
Okay. So I'm now going to ask, is there anyone participating on this call who is opposed that would like to speak? And I have Mary Holman wanting to speak. Are you on, Mary?
I have Mary Holman coming in and then two others who would wish to speak as well after her.
That's fine. So as soon as Mary's on, I'm going to have her sworn in, okay? Can you hear me, Mary?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes. Miss Winter, will you please swear in Miss Holman?
Ms. Holman, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mary.
My concerns with this request are really around the fact that Mr. Maldonado in the past has not abided by the decisions of the board. As he stated, he did come before the board, I think it was like 4 years ago, and he was denied the use of that back area, and yet he continued to use it with all the construction materials. We would hear all the neighbors for, for several streets over and parcels over. You could hear the construction material being loaded up as early as 5 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes it seemed like it was even earlier than that. As those that have been on the board for a while can attest, the village repeatedly went over, told him to cease and desist, and yet he didn't. And we finally had to take more formal action and actually serve him to have him stop and actually abide by the rules that the village had set before him. So my concerns are that with this 100 feet, is he going to go ahead and take the whole lot all the way back to the acequia as he has done in the past? And as the pictures demonstrate that are in your packets, there currently is building material back there, landscape material. And as Mr. Maldonado stated in his opening statement, they've been parking back there right now. And currently they don't have permission for it. There are neighbors that back onto his property on Roll that did speak before the planning and zoning last month on this, about the disruption and not only the noise, but all of the dust and how it was limiting them on the use of their residential backyard. So those are my concerns. I would certainly like to see that the village enforce whatever the decision is. Knowing that, I've been in your seats for years, and it was a difficult time. We had, canvassing and policing some of the rules that we had set out, or having it enforced. So I would just ask that whatever the decision of the board, that they not only consider the existing neighbors and the residential use around that area, but whatever the decision is, that you are willing to enforce it.
Thank you, Mary. Is there anyone else participating on the call who is opposed that would like to speak? If so, please use the raise your hand button. Mr. Copeland, are you ready to speak? I think you're muted. Can you hear us, Mr. Copeland? He's muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes. So
Okay.
Ms. Winter, will you please swear in Mr. Copeland?
Mr. Copeland, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead, Mr. Copeland.
Okay, so I just want to echo everything that Mary said. I live at 301 Row, and my property has two structures. One's a single family home, and then there's a duplex that I rent out. The duplex backs up right up to this property. And when there are trucks out there and the dirt and the dust flying around, my tenants can't open their windows. And when the weather's nice, they like to spend their time outside. But when the trucks are out there and the dirt and the noise, they have to go in their apartments and shut up all the windows, and in the summer months. It's been a real problem, and just like Mary said, sometimes early in the morning, there's a lot of noise out there. And so I'm opposed to it. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anyone else on this call who is opposed that would like to speak? Again, please use the raise your hand button.
Stand by.
Thank you. Is it Liana Montano?
Hello, yes, it is.
Okay, please give us your address, and I'm going to ask, first of all, give us your address.
Our address is 306 Roll. It's
Okay,
myself
Ms.
and, oh, sorry.
Will you please swear Liana in?
Ms. Montano, can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm here
Go
with
ahead,
my
Liana.
husband as well. Can we swear him in too?
Yes, identify yourself and give us your address.
Leonard Aguilar, 306 Roll Road.
Ms. Winter, please swear him in.
Mr. Aguilar, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay, Liana, you go ahead first.
I would just like to echo what the others have said before me in opposing the change of the 100 feet, because pretty much of what they said, there's still a lot of construction use and all the noise and everything that goes with it all the time. Not only that, but the big trucks going down the road with the trailers. And also just the fact that this has been going on now for, I think it started in 2015. And while it was denied then, the land is still being used for construction, and it didn't seem like any changes had happened. And so I feel that because it wasn't abided to before, that it should be allowed.
Mr. Aguilar, you go ahead.
I would just like to basically ditto the same thing she just said. Also, I think if the 100 feet was approved, it would, again, they would just keep using the whole lot for the same thing, including turning the trucks around. These trucks have really long trailers on them, and there's tractors back there. Nothing has changed since it was denied, and so I oppose.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to ask the governing body if you have any questions or comments that you want to address to either the applicant or the individuals who have spoken in opposition.
Sorry to interrupt, Mayor, trustees. I think we still have one other person who will be commenting.
Oh, okay. I thought there was only two more. So Kiko, can you, first of all, that the other person, whoever it is, please use the raise your hand button.
Yes, I raised my hand.
Okay, please give us your full name and address.
My name is Don Allison. My address is 12501 Crestline Avenue Northeast.
Okay, Ms. Winter, will you swear Don in?
Mr. Allison, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I'm just calling to support the others that have spoken out in opposition to Mr. Maldonado's application. This is a number of times that he has violated the rules of the village and used the property to his own liking, and then seeking approval for what he's done after the fact. That's not the way we do business in Los Ranchos or any civilized society. And, you know, keeping the trustees, you know, listening to complaint after complaint, I'm sure we're sounding like a worn out record, but Mr. Maldonado continues to push his agenda in opposition to his neighbors. And, you know, we've just about had it from Mr. Maldonado, and his use of that property is zoned appropriately, and he cannot, should not be allowed to change it. It's not in character with the 4th Street area plan, and his continued pursuit of his goal is contrary to the peace and quiet of our neighborhood.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition to this? Please use the raise your hand button. Apparently not.
Hands raised.
Thank you. At this time then, are there any questions or comments from the Board of Trustees to either the applicant or the folks who have spoken in opposition? Being none, the floor is now closed for comments. I need a motion.
I move that we deny this request.
I need a second.
I second.
At this time, is there any discussion, further discussion? Being none, I'm going to call for the question. Call for the roll call vote. Trustee Rael,
Yes.
Trustee Lewis,
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
The application is denied in accordance with the findings contained in the planning report by Director Justice. Okay,
John,
yes,
you forgot Riccobeni, I think.
I'm sorry, did I? I've checked his name. Trustee Riccobeni, how do you vote?
Yeah, yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's move to item 10, old business. There is none. 11, announcements. There is none.
So, Mayor, sorry to
Yes.
interrupt.
Go right ahead.
So I know that we just acted on that application. However, after the comments from the public, I believe the applicant should have had the opportunity to respond. If it's possible, could we give the applicant an opportunity to respond and possibly redo that vote?
Well, if I missed that, I apologize. Attorney Winter, can I reopen it at that point?
I think at a minimum, you have to give him his opportunity to respond.
Okay, and I agree.
If his response changes the motion made at the beginning, we can revisit that.
That's fine. So Jerome Maldonado, are you still on?
Yes, thank you, guys.
Okay,
So
go
just-
ahead and respond to these comments. Go right
Yeah,
ahead.
just to respond, I'm very familiar with the village. I lived in the village since 1998. I built my first house there. I was in the same house for 18 years. I've owned over 11 properties in the village of Los Ranchos, commercial properties. My office still resides at 6841, and I own all the way 6841 through 6847 4th Street. I know what we expect out of the village because I've developed in the village, I've built in the village, I've renovated. I've been doing this since John Hooker was mayor back in the village. And so I've advocated for the village. This property has become a sore thumb in our ribs. And the reason we had bought this property was one, because of the unique characteristics. We revitalized the property up front, made it habitable again. And we're able to bring good businesses to the village of Los Ranchos, apartment tenants in the back. And so we have people that also live there. We have tenants that live there, and not one has complained. Now, when the application was actually denied, I worked with Keenan and I worked with the village, and we actually did. We took out over 100 yards of concrete that were in the back. We were storing materials all the way to the back wall. We don't use any of that property anymore. So, and we don't get started at 5 o'clock in the morning. Since 1995, since our office, we start operations at 7 a.m. and then the guys come back in the afternoons. And so we don't start operations at 5 o'clock in the morning. So any noise that's being made at 5 o'clock in the morning has never been from us. And it won't be in the future because we're not going to be operating at 5 o'clock in the morning. 7 a.m. is the earliest that we get started. And so with that being said, we have pulled all of our equipment forward. And before we even did the last application, Keenan and them required that we pull all that stuff forward. So the only reason it looks like things haven't changed is because that stuff, before we did the application 3, 4, 5 years ago, whenever it was, we pulled all that stuff forward. We cleaned out over 100 yards of concrete and debris that we did have piled up back there. And we pulled all the construction materials forward. Now, some stuff got stored back there, even from back then, that we don't use. There's pallets of brick and stuff like that that I may use for personal use. And I talked to the Keenan and these folks about it, and they were okay with some of those blocks and stuff staying back there as long as we weren't going in and facilitating business, which they haven't. They're the same exact pallets. If you do a Google Earth from 2017 or 2016 or whenever it was we did the last application, the same pallets are still sitting there. We haven't used them, put new stuff in or taking stuff out. It's the same stuff. But yes, we do pull the vehicles back. We lock them just behind the fence. This 100 feet will allow us to just get the vehicles to the back. Now, it does take some micromanagement for the guys to turn around. So I do accept that. In fact, that the guys probably do pull to the back only to turn around in the vehicles, but they're not loading equipment. There's not dust back there because we're not running tractors in the back portion. The only portion that we're utilizing is the first 400 feet and really the first 300 feet and the first 400 feet just to park the vehicles overnight, where we back, well, they don't back them out. Obviously they're turning them around, which we can manage that stuff and just be on it a little bit more so. But we've complied with the village. We've worked with Keenan. If we need to pull more material forward, we're happy to do so. If those pallets now are an issue in the approval process, well, so be it, we'll move them. I'm open to working with the village and complying with whatever they're doing. We have complied and we have worked with them. The only thing that we're out of compliance is we do pull the vehicles behind the fence line. And that's what this extra 100 feet will do. It'll give us that ability. The homes and two of the homeowners that talked about it, they're not even going to be affected any differently, even if we don't get the 300 feet, because one of the houses from the folks that spoke this evening, they sit within that 300 foot anyway. So for them, it's not going to change anything for them anyhow, nonetheless, because where the 300 feet ends right now, we're allowed to park the vehicles and park stuff there anyhow. Now for the other gentleman in the back, we're not even doing business there. We built him a fence, a coyote fence to block all of this years ago in lieu of trying to work with them. We spent over $7,000 building that fence on their behalf. And, so we've tried to appease everybody back there, and we'll continue to try to appease people to make it work, but we're not going at 5 a.m. and we're not storing stuff all the way to the back of the lot, even at this point in time. That stuff is subsided and that whole back area is completely vacant at this point in time. So nonetheless.
Okay. Attorney Nan Winter, under Robert's rules, do I need a vote from the Board of Trustees to reopen the vote on 9A or not?
I think that might be procedurally the best way to do it.
That's what I think. So I'm going to ask the Board of Trustees, before we get to the motion and the second and the vote, do any of you have questions of the applicant after he has spoken?
I have a question for.
Go right ahead, Trustee
for
Lewis.
Tiffany Justice. It's not for the applicant, but it's for Ms.
Go right ahead.
So Tiffany, when you talk about this application being unwarranted, can you go into a little bit more detail about that?
Yes, Mayor, Trustee Lewis, trustees. So in terms of being warranted, the purpose of the zone change application is for both equipment storage and vehicle storage. And so basically the current configuration of the lot already allows for the minimum required amount of commercial parking in the commercial section of the property. If they were to move the equipment storage in the existing C1 portion, that could affect the commercial portion, the parking that's in the commercial portion. However, the inability to expand or have that use is not necessarily warranting a zone change, because I guess there are lots of different types of uses that can go on a property, and they have to be balanced with all of the other uses that are on the property. So the inability to have one specific use does not warrant a zone change.
Okay, thank you.
And also, I would just, I guess, like to clarify something from one of the comments earlier. For the current, there is currently equipment and vehicles in the residential zone portion. And one of the options that we provided the applicant was in a notice of violation letter, we gave the option to pursue the option for a variance or remove the vehicles. So at this point, they're proceeding through the options that we provided in the notice of violation letter.
Any other questions from the governing body to the applicant or anybody else, Ms. Justice, or those that have spoken not in favor of this?
Tiffany, I have a question. he said he worked with Keen to mitigate this, whatever situation was before. Do you know if this, if he actually cleared out the area and stopped using it for parking when we had denied it before? Or the trustees had denied it before?
Trustee Royale, Mayor, trustees, I'm not exactly familiar with how much has changed between 2015 to now, and also prior to 2015. The current state of the property is just something that we noticed in code enforcement at this present moment. I am assuming that they did work to clean up the property based on the accounts from the public's comments saying that there was a lot of vehicles and equipment and materials towards the back. That is less so the case now. So I'm assuming that there was some coordination.
Also, another question, if we allow this, the C, and make it a C1, then he would be allowed to do whatever he wanted to. That's allowed in C1, isn't that correct? Not just park, do whatever.
Yes, so that is one of the, I guess, caveats of any zone change application, is that the zone change application is not necessarily tied to any site development plan. So you can technically get the zone change and not do what you say you are going to do. You can also get the zone change and do what you say you're going to do. So that's kind of just, I guess, a given for any zone change application. I would like to point out the page on page 91 of your packet that you can kind of see what proposed 100 feet would add to the parking and equipment storage area. It is roughly what is existing right now. And so if this application were denied, they would have to move the materials and vehicles back into the 300 feet.
Any other questions from the governing body? Okay, under Robert's rules, I'm going to ask the Board of Trustees to reopen the vote for 9A. So I need a motion to do that.
I move that reopen the vote.
I need a second.
Second.
I'm going to call for the question. I'm going to call for the roll call vote to reopen the vote for 9A. Trustee Rael.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Riccabini.
Yes.
We now have heard from everybody, I believe. The floor is now closed for comments. I now need a motion on 9A, the application for 9A.
I move that we deny the proposed request.
I need a second.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I just like to say, I think based on what Tiffany said, that a possible option is a variance. I feel like I'm a little more comfortable if they head in that direction, but with a zone change, I'm not comfortable.
And what is your vote?
I vote yes to deny.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Riccabini.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for handling the procedure the way we did. Go ahead.
Mayor, could we, I guess Pablo did move to deny, however, could we get his official vote?
Well, we already did. We just did.
Oh, I apologize.
Yeah. I guess what I failed to say is, as I said at the prior time, this denial is in accordance with the findings that are in your planning report. Okay? All right. Item 10 is old business. There is none. Item 11 is announcements. There are none. 12A, discussion and approval to adopt ordinance number 273, an ordinance relating to cannabis and the cannabis-derived products, prohibiting the cultivation, manufacture, and distribution of cannabis and cannabis-derived products in the village, providing an exception for personal production of cannabis under the Lynn and Aaron Compassionate Use Act, providing an exception for the sale of cannabis-derived products in the C1, GD, and VC zones of the village. Director Justice, please present the ordinance.
Mayor, trustees, so this ordinance, as described by the mayor, this would prohibit the growth, manufacturing and sale of cannabis in all residential zones in the village. And this would also prohibit the growth and manufacture, however, not the sale of cannabis in commercial and mixed use zones. This is the same ordinance that was before you last month for advertisement, however, with the technical corrections mentioned by Trustee Royale. I stand for any questions.
Okay. I notice, Attorney Nan Winter, that there's no provision for me to ask for comments from anybody on the call. Why is that?
Well, this should be open for public comment.
That's what I'm thinking.
Mhm.
So let's go ahead and ask if there's anyone on this call who wants to speak in favor of this ordinance or make comments about it. Please use the raise your right hand button.
There are no hands raised.
Okay, is there anyone on this call who wishes to speak not in favor of this ordinance or raise comments about it at this time? If so, use the raise your hand button.
Again, there are no hands raised.
Okay, what I'm going to do now is ask for a motion and a second and then open it up for discussion. I noticed that in the packet, there is a letter that we did receive that's attached, and it's on page 105, dated March 3rd, 2021. So I'm sure all of you, especially the governing body, has read it. I need a motion.
I move that we approve ordinance number 273.
I need a second.
Second.
Okay, I have a second. Okay, at this time, is there any discussion from the governing body? Who wants to speak first? Anybody? Trustee Pacheco.
I guess I will go first. This has been a little bit of a difficult ordinance to wrap my head around. We know that this is going to be a new venture for the state. If everything goes in the direction that we think that it is going to go, and that obviously is going to be a new direction for us in the village. I wish we would have had a little more feedback from the community. I'm a bit torn. I go back and forth because we're separating this into three different things, cultivation, production, and sales. And it's a lot to put into place, being so new with the whole cannabis situation. I don't feel, I guess, like we need to be the leaders, the village need to be the leaders in establishing full-on support for cannabis. But I also feel that in the best interest of the entire community, in respect to our neighbors, all the village residents, really our job is to protect our residents kind of from what the unknown is with cannabis and cannabis derived products and what those might bring. I think I would like to have a better understanding of the pros and the cons of cannabis and how it's gonna impact the village, I guess. But I also feel like we have to have, that full understanding and, kind of let it settle in before we kind of take a full step forward with it. So I would say in the best interest of the whole community, I'm comfortable approving the ordinance as it is, but I really would like to see how the dust settles and maybe revisit this ordinance again at a later time. And I hope I can hear some other comments from fellow trustees with regard to this as well.
Okay, does any of the other trustees want to speak at this time?
Sure, I'll speak.
Go ahead, trustee Lewis.
I feel like I agree with trustee Pacheco in a way. I feel like this is an issue that brings no benefit to the village. It doesn't supplement our image, our marketing, or who we are. And so I'm glad to see us in front of the issue. And I strongly support it. But I do agree with trustee Pacheco in that, you know, we're all assuming the state's going to legalize this going forward. We don't know. We don't know how it's going to unfold. We don't know how it's going to differentiate hemp from pot. And so I'm for us having this ordinance on the books, but I agree that give it a little bit of time for the dust to clear. And I think it's an issue that we definitely should revisit and not be afraid to come back and amend this ordinance once we see how the dust settles.
Any other comments from the trustees?
Question, please.
Go ahead.
For Attorney Winters, are we able to make changes going forward, either to make certain provisions in the future that are changed from this ordinance? Are we able to change this in any way?
Mayor, Trustee Riccobeni, yes, you would amend an ordinance with an ordinance. And, you know, after we see what the state legislature does, after some practice, maybe after some experience by other municipalities, you can, you know, come back to this, you know, in 3 months, 6 months, a year, and, you know, make it your own, but it would have to be by ordinance.
Okay, and I was a little bit disturbed about that we're going, that hemp was part of it. As I did some research, though, I can certainly see how they could be tied together. I think that what I'm understanding, hemp is a very great, a good source of many things. However, there are some legalities about how that hemp is processed. So I'm in favor of this right now. I really am. And I think it's the right way to go, given that we can go ahead and make changes as we move forward.
Okay, Director of Justice, do you have anything else to say about this?
Mayor,
Pablo, go ahead.
I thought the letter that we got from Mr. Seeley was very a good letter and made some good points. However, I agree with everyone else that we can always come back and change it. And at this point in time, I think this is the right way to go.
Okay. Director of Justice, do you have anything else to say about this?
Mayor, trustees, no. I think what the trustees have said is all correct. We can revisit this at a later time, especially once we find out what the official word is from the state.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Rael.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Riccobeni.
Yes.
Thank you. 9B is being postponed until further notice. Ordinance number 274, an ordinance defining odors as nuisances, prohibiting odors, requiring odor control measures, and providing an exception for odors from livestock and agricultural activities. I'd like to read this statement in regard to the postponement. Ordinance number 274 on nuisance orders was approved for advertisement at last month's board meeting. The ordinance is noted on tonight's agenda as postponed because during the advertisement period, staff discussed with the village's legal counsel and agreed that the topic requires more research to ensure enforceability and equal application for all potential nuisance orders in the village. Staff will look into the requirements and successes of other communities to make changes and may propose a revised ordinance at a later time. Ordinance 273 is still on the agenda for adoption. Okay, that's item B. Item C is discussion and approval to advertise ordinance number 275, amending Chapter 7, Article 2, Section 5 of the Village of Los Ranchos Animal Control Ordinance, providing for noises created by livestock to be exempt from provisions regarding animals disturbing the peace. Director Justice, please present the amended change.
Mayor, trustees, so the whereas clauses in this kind of explain it. The village is an agricultural community, and currently in our ordinances, there's a bit of a contradiction with the nuisances, misconduct, and common offenses section and the animal control ordinance. Right now, in the nuisances, misconduct, and common offenses section, we do exempt livestock from being considered excessive noise, and then in the animal control ordinance, we do not. So this ordinance proposes to make both sections consistent and exempt livestock in the animal control section. The language that's proposed in this ordinance is taken directly from the nuisances, misconduct, and common offenses section. So this will align. And I stand for any questions.
Okay, before we get to discussion and questions, I need a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve.
I need a second.
I second.
Okay, is there now any discussion or questions for Ms. Justice about this proposed ordinance?
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you just explain the definition of livestock for me?
Yes, Trustee Lewis, Mayor, trustees, let me find that section in our code so that I can kind of read it out.
Thank you.
Go right ahead. Trustee Lewis, Mayor, trustees, in the nuisances, misconduct, and common offenses section, we define livestock as meaning cattle, llama, buffalo, horses, mules, donkeys, burros, sheep, goats, rabbits, poultry, ostriches, or emu. Other domestic animals useful to man, not specifically included herein, may be classified as livestock upon application to the village with sufficient evidence to allow the village to determine that said animal is being used for agricultural purposes.
So this has worked as far as it's a clear differentiation from dogs and other animals like that. I mean, it's worked, it's been working.
Yes, Trustee Lewis, Mayor, trustees, that there is a distinction between domesticated animals like dogs and livestock, and the consideration that domesticated animals like and noise from domesticated animals like dogs barking would still be considered a violation of the animal control ordinance.
Okay, thank you very much, Tiffany.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion on this before we call for the question? Okay, I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Rael.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Riccobeni.
Yes.
Item D, discussion and approval of resolution number 2021-03-01, revising policy and procedures for conducting commercial film, digital video, and still photography activities in the village of Los Ranchos. Director Justice, please present the resolution.
Mayor, trustees, so you'll notice in the packet that there's about 8 separate documents, including the resolution. The documents after the resolution are supplemental and would be adopted with this resolution. I'm going to kind of go through the changes that I propose in each of these documents, and feel free to jump in with questions at any time, or I will also take questions at the end. So first on page 113, this is a revised policy and procedures for filming in Los Ranchos. Much of the language is the same as what was adopted back in 2019. We did discuss with the legal department about, I guess, clarifying and expanding on the insurance section. So we've specified some of the insurances that are required just to make sure that we're doubly protected. We did, the biggest change that you'll see is on page 115 under the fee schedule. This is, I guess, the biggest change in the film policy. This is the most, I guess, substantial change in the policy overall and the revised documents. Just to clarify, we are essentially reducing our film permit fees pretty drastically. There's a few things that we've done. First is that we've added tiers to the film permit fees. Originally, there was just a flat fee for any size of production. However, we did receive feedback from folks in the industry that there are various sizes of productions, and our ordinance seemed to assume that it would be a large, like a film production or a television production, but there are smaller productions for commercials or documentaries that would be likely to create less nuisance due to their size. So we have created a tiered system and tiered the prices based on that. And then in terms of the other revisions, we did originally have an application processing fee that has been removed, and now there is just a film permit fee. The film permit fee has been severely reduced. Originally it was $2,000. As you can see, the large production is now $100. The daily fee and special permit fee are still fees that we take into account. These are fees that we would charge per day on the application, and this includes filming, prep, and wrap. So not necessarily just the day that they're filming. If a film production will be on a property for a week and they'll spend only 2 of those days filming and the rest setting up and wrapping, we will still be charging for the entire week that they're there. And the original daily permit fee was $200. That's pretty much checked out, and then we reduced the fees accordingly for smaller productions. And the special permit fee was originally $500 per day, which you can see that still checks out, and then we've reduced it for smaller productions. Yes, question?
Does somebody have a question for Director Justice?
So is this just from feedback from the industry? Or, I mean, it seemed like when we did this originally, we were hesitant on even allowing filming in the village. And then we said, all right, we'll allow it, but it's going to be sort of pricey. So this seems to be a real movement away from that. And what's prompting that? I mean, I'm not saying that some of our fees shouldn't come down some, but some of it was, some of the discussion, as I remember at that time, was that, we just didn't want everybody filming in the village.
Director Justice?
Trustee Lewis, Mayor, trustees. Yes, so this is partially to encourage filming in the village. To be truthful, we have issued 1 film permit since this was originally adopted back in July of 2019. We originally had a couple other permits who were scheduled back in March of 2020. And since then, we haven't received any interest up until January again of this year. So part of that has been to encourage film productions to come to the village. Another factor is that we did receive feedback from the film industry, but we also were comparing some of our pricing to other communities in the area. And our fees still remain relatively high, even if they are reduced at this rate. For context, Rio Rancho and the city of Albuquerque, they do not charge film permit fees. They simply charge fees for the other things that can be part of a film permit. So for example, if somebody's going to be closing a lane, they will charge their barricade permit, which is still something that we would also do. So they don't actually charge film permit fees. And they actually only issue film permits for filming that occurs on their property, or if it requires a special notice, like if there's pyrotechnics. Santa Fe also has a $25 daily fee, and similarly, they only issue permits for filming on their property, it seems. Corrales is probably the most comparable at this point. They have a $100 permit fee, and then they have a $250 daily fee. So that checks out with roughly what we have. However, we also did reduce pricing for small and medium productions, which is not something that Corrales specifies. So,
Okay, thank you.
yes. So even though there is some reductions, we're still relatively expensive, I guess, compared to some of the surrounding area.
Thank you. Tiffany.
Okay,
Miss
Go ahead.
Justice or Tiffany, what were our large production fees prior to this edit?
So our production fees, so the daily fee and the special fee are actually the same. The reduction is in the film permit fee, was originally $2,000. And we also had an application processing fee of $500. That was a non-refundable fee that would that was just for processing the application, not necessarily issuance.
Okay, are there any other questions? for Director
I've got a couple more.
Sure.
I remember that we discussed the difficulty of processing an application to make sure that our residences were that we had things on in very specific order prior to allowing a production to begin. That was one of our key pieces. And then further, we also discussed that the processing fee, we put a processing fee because of that amount of time, and further that would not be a refundable fee given the amount of time that staff had to spend on it. And what I'm seeing in this is that we've got $100. We're even going to be they put $100 permit fee. And then if they end up not doing the production, even after we've spent the time putting the time into it, we're going to give them the $100 back. And I've got a problem with that, unless I'm reading this wrong.
Trustee Riccobene, Mayor, trustees. So that is correct. If a film production were to cancel for some reason, they would be refunded prorated for the amount that they haven't been filming. I guess one other factor to consider is that you mentioned the long processing time that it would take to process the film permit. That's actually reason for the changes to the permit application later in the packet. There's one page that mentions just for office use, and this is the checklist that staff would go through for any film permit to make sure that it's compliant. And with that kind of, I guess, clarified, that does shorten the time that it would take for staff to process the permit.
Thank you.
And I guess I would also say that, I guess, since this is all up for adoption, this is also open for consideration, and I'm open to any suggestions for the changes that are proposed.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the governing body? Well, I'm going to go ahead and ask for a motion.
Oh, sorry,
Go ahead.
Mayor. This is just the policy on its own. I will actually go through the rest of the documents.
Oh, go right ahead, please.
One at a time. One thing that does stay the same that I think aligns with the intent of the original film policy and is still being done is the letters of notification and signatures for anything that would require exemption, like nighttime filming, noise, pyrotechnics. That is something that is still going to be required. It's a standard across all municipalities, and it is something that we haven't changed. That still will be done. So on page 121 is the film guidelines. This is essentially a simplified and expanded upon version of the film policy. So the film policy is more for internal use. You can tell that there's a little bit more technical legal language within it. The film guidelines are intended for film production to be able to know what they need to do and what our requirements are, who to contact. We explain a little bit more in some of these sections compared to the policy, because this is for the applicant. These things include like the site plan, construction and drone sections. These are sections that we don't necessarily need to include in the policy, since we can be a little bit flexible with them, especially as things change. And if we find out, for example, that we should require something else in the site plan, we can amend this relatively quickly. This is essentially the same as the film policy, but just meant for it's just in layman's terms. One thing that is a little bit different is the consideration section has been added. That's something that we took from the city of Albuquerque, that mentions that, you know, if there is a production that is interfering with the operation of a business, the business may request compensation, and it's up to the film production to follow through with that. One thing to note is that acknowledgement was something that we used to require in the original permit, but now we've made it optional because we received some pushback from productions that I guess for some purposes would like to, I guess, keep the illusion that it's not filmed in Los Ranchos de Albuquerque. So it's been changed to be optional, with the specification that if they do credit us, that they credit us as the Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque. Now, are there any questions on the film guidelines? Hearing none.
Go ahead.
I will. So the film permit application on page 130, you'll notice that it's a much more simple version of the film permit that we used to have. However, the content that we ask is essentially the same. What we did is we just requested more attachments. Originally, we allowed attachments and also provided an alternative for applicants. However, we realized that we don't need to provide that alternative because these are things that film production should have, and if they don't have them, they need to have them. For example, the location agreement between the private property owner and the film production. We used to have language that allowed a film production to have the property owner sign off on our application instead of providing the location agreement. But that's something that they should have anyways. So we don't need to provide that alternative. And on page 137, that is essentially our checklist for staff to go through. Much of it is just notification, and then also just reviewing to make sure that if they do have special exemptions, that they've contacted police and fire and they've done public notice and gotten signatures from the required radius. They need to be 75% of approval. And then on page 139, these are just example templates of the filming notices. They don't necessarily have to use the template, but the information that we request has to be included, and this is pretty standard across the industry. Page 145 is a blanket film permit application that accounts for very small productions, a cast and crew of 6 or fewer, that essentially we anticipate that they wouldn't create any real impact on the surrounding neighborhood. So we just want to know that they are filming in the village. We don't require any fees, and we also require less information and sign off from them. One thing to note is that with the blanket film permit application, if a cast and crew size of 6 or fewer is still asking for something like nighttime filming, or will have pyrotechnics or special effects, they still have to get they still have to fill out the full permit in those circumstances. And then on page 148, there is an example location agreement. This is something that's new. This is something that we didn't have before. However, as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of standard procedure for a film production to have a location agreement with the private property owner that they're filming, whose property they're filming on. We don't have this document currently, so if a film production were to film on village property, we do want to have the same assurances that a private property owner would have in terms of insurance and restoration of that property back to the way that it was. So this is an example template. There's obviously opportunity for negotiation with this, as with any kind of agreement. However, this is standard language that we do want to be considered. I guess also just related to village properties, we still have the village facility rentals applications that are required for anybody who's renting any of our facilities. So if a film production is planning on filming on one of those locations, on one of our locations, or just using base camp or crew parking, they still need to fill out that application and have all the requirements of that application as well. And then on page 159, there is a addendum for filming during COVID-19. This New Mexico Film Office does have requirements for productions to follow COVID safe practices, and we want to be able to assure that any production that is filming in Los Ranchos during COVID-19 is following the procedures that they should be. And that way we can also reassure anybody who sees possibly, a gathering of that size that it is allowed. Now I will stand for any questions on any of those additional documents and for the proposed changes.
Are there questions? Yes, Trustee Pacheco.
Director Justice, so this proposed applications are they're different than what had been proposed before, or they're just revised?
Trustee Pacheco, Mayor, trustees, the blanket film permit application is completely brand new. The location agreement is completely brand new, and the COVID addendum is completely brand new, as well as the film guidelines. The film policy and the permit application are revised versions of what was originally adopted. And the film permit application essentially asks for the same information that we asked for before.
Okay, and you said that the application fee has gone away.
Yes.
You've kind of taken that away. To me, it just seems like there's going to be a lot of time spent on these applications from your department. And probably from others as well. Have we taken into account the time that would be required to kind of ensure that all these are filled out properly? And I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of going back and forth with these productions in terms of gathering, some of the required documents from them, maybe discussion just in, filling out the application. Have we thought about that at all in terms of time that staff would spend on these?
Trustee Pacheco, Mayor, trustees, yes. So I guess the primary basis for the fees that we have, I guess the time that staff would be spending on them, like to process these applications, and as well as the follow-up in case we have any complaints from the neighbors, that kind of thing, that is accounted for in the special permit fee, the daily permit fee, and the film permit fee. So the longer that a production is in the village, the more likely it is that we're going to get nuisance calls and have staff need to respond to those. So of course we still have those fees accounted for. For the conversations, I guess, kind of going back and forth, that is something that we do for all of our applications. And that is time that we don't, I guess, account for in our application fees. However, that's something that as a public entity that we provide that service, we are here to talk through the permits that we have for any of our permits, whether it's for filming, public hearing items, or for building permits. We regularly field questions on all of our applications that aren't necessarily included in the in the permit fees for those applications. And for the most part, I believe that film productions these days are used to filling out forms from the communities. Most of the information that we require is something that any community would require. So they're used to kind of filling out the forms and filling out the permits. They just want to know what it is. And then we'll ask questions as things specifically come up, same as kind of any application.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the governing body for Ms. Justice? Go ahead, Alan.
Sure. Ms. Justice, I guess my comments are, you know, the village went a very long time without allowing filming in the village. And then it was sort of a big step to say, all right, we're going to open that door, that we're going to try to make it fairly exclusive, or, you know, not everybody and his brother coming in here and shooting the film. And so I'm concerned that now that, you know, COVID's going to be over here shortly, and with the commitment Netflix has made to the community, et cetera, I guess I'm concerned that the film permit fees, one, are too low, and two, shouldn't be refundable. You all have very full plates and work very hard. And you know, film industry is not to be a source of income for the village. It's something that, you know, we're allowing, and it shouldn't be something that we lose money on or take away so much staff time. And so I guess just my comments are, I would seriously reconsider the film permit fees and raising them and quite possibly making them non-refundable. Again, I don't think we need to open this door wide open. Thank you.
I would like to make a comment on this entire process. Alicia Keys was the head of the Albuquerque Film Office in September of 2018. And she and some businesses on 4th Street asked me to meet with them to find out if there was any way possible to allow filming in the village, because the late mayor, Larry Abraham, just put his foot down and said no. I felt at that time that allowing filming in the village was a very, very good thing to do. I still feel that way. I think that we can make it work. I know that Ms. Justice has spent an enormous amount of time working with Administrator Ann Simon and myself to come up with what we think is a reasonable approach. If the governing body wants to revisit, you know, when you make your motion, whoever makes the motion can go ahead and request whatever you want of our staff to determine where you want these fees to actually be. But from my perspective, I think filming in the village is something that is really, I don't know if important's the right word. I think it's desirable. That's where I'm coming from. And I think my staff, I know Director Justice has spent really a fair amount of time researching and talking to the film industry and making sure that this village is in fact protected. And I think that's an important thing. Ann, do you want to say something now, please?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Mayor and trustees. And I do want to also echo congrats to Tiffany for doing such a great job in taking a look at this issue. This is a great clean industry. I was on the original film task force appointed by the late Mayor Abraham when I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission years ago. And I remember really struggling with how to carefully craft a policy that didn't open the floodgates necessarily to filming in the village, but, you know, allowed for some careful considerations. And the village took a different direction and had a moratorium on filming. As an economic developer, working for the Council of Governments, we constantly got questioned why the village was not open to filming. It's a clean industry for the most part. Yes, there are some nuisances that are created, but with careful consideration like those that Ms. Justice has researched and considered, I think the village can do this the way it's been presented.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. Any further discussion from the governing body?
Yes, Mayor.
Go ahead, Pablo, you first.
Okay, I just want to say, the reason, as I recall, the reason that we stopped doing or did not allow any more filming in the village was not because the village didn't want it, it was because the residents around where they were filming were being disturbed with such things as trucks being parked in their driveways, blocking them from not allowing them to back out of their own driveways, noise. Nobody had buy-in for wherever they were filming. And it seemed like this policy now has covered that, because now you have to get approval from 75%, I believe, of the residents around the film area. So one individual that's approving it because they're making money off of it, it's the neighborhood around it is also has buy-in, because they have to sign off that they're in agreement for them to do the filming there. And that the reason was that, you know, there was too much of a nuisance at one time, because they didn't have any rules to go by. I think we have rules now, and I don't see why we can't go with it. But I don't disagree with Trustee Lewis that perhaps the fees are low and maybe should be raised to make sure these people, they're really serious about what they want to do. That's all.
Hey, Trustee Riccobeni, I thought you wanted to say something.
I did, sir. Thank you very much, Mayor. I too feel as though I think that one of these large productions are much more effort than a few hours time for us to go through and make sure that the applications are in order. And we talked about this when we went through a few months of public comment and consideration for the film industry. We're not saying no, we're open to it, but at the same time, it's going to take us, I think, is going to take more time than we're allowing for right now. Secondly, therefore I think that the fees being adjusted down. I wished I would have seen a plus and minus. I didn't have time to go back to the original what we originally wrote. I want to be careful about this, because we were very concerned about putting all that work in and then having somebody pull out. And right now, it's very easy for them to pull out. The second thing, after we put all that work into it, the third item I want to bring up is that I don't think that the gaps are correct. I certainly understand 6 or less, 6 crew and staff and actors and so on and so forth. But what I'm seeing right now is the small film is much larger than 6. So I would also want to revisit that and allow for students and small films to take place, or small productions to take place. But I'm not sure that I don't know how that application process would be shortened depending upon the film size. So those are the things that I don't understand from this, and I'm struggling a little bit with that right now. This is very different than what we discussed when we had public comment, and I think number one is to make sure that we make sure our residences are not adversely affected either by the film or by our staff putting attention toward a film production, and then something else goes away because of the amount of time that this could take. So I'm struggling a little bit with that right now.
Okay, Trustee Lewis.
First, I was remiss earlier in saying Tiffany, let me tell you what, I think you've done an excellent job. This is a much more detailed, a much more comprehensive and a much more professional film policy than what we had. And I'm not opposed to filming in the village. I feel like the village is a very special place. And I have a concern that, I mean, this isn't Rio Rancho. This isn't the city of Albuquerque. And we have so much that's desirable. You know, my concern is to echo Trustee Riccobene. I don't want staff taken away because this surges to something bigger than we thought. And that being said, I'm not advocating going back to $2,000, you know, permit fees. But I am saying that I feel like our fees are just a little bit low, and you all are going to put in some time and some effort, and I don't see why we would then give them their money back if they change their mind after you've put in the time and the effort. And so that's where I'm struggling a little bit. I think films are very, you know, filming in the village can be very exciting. I think you've done the things to protect the neighborhoods and to eliminate the nuisance issues as much as we can. It's just really, it's a matter of fact that, you know, I think it's going to take more. It seems to me at this time, it's going to take more staff time than we think or we allowing for, and certainly permitting fees or allowing for. So.
Any further comments from the Board of Trustees? I'm going to ask for a motion. Obviously, there's some issues that need to be discussed. I'm not sure if the governing body wants to defer this item or not, but I need a motion.
Can I ask a question, Mayor?
Of course, of course.
So if we choose to defer this, and we get a production that comes in and wants to film, are they given the old application, or how does that work?
Director of Justice.
Trustee Pacheco, Mayor, trustees, yes, they would be given the old application they would be given technically the currently adopted application with the currently adopted policy with the currently adopted fees.
And if we're not really sure, I think as the governing body, I mean, I think we all agree that maybe we're not accounting for the application fee correctly, but I'm not sure that I can even say what that application fee should be. Would we defer it, and could we quickly turn it around, or can we approve it with, move to approve it with further discussion with staff in trying to develop what that fee would look like?
So let me ask Attorney Winter that question. If it's approved with language like Trustee Pacheco was suggesting, where does that leave us legally? Ms. Winter?
So Mayor, Trustee Pacheco, are you suggesting that we leave the fee structure unresolved but pass the balance of the proposal?
I think that's what I'm saying, yes.
Okay, so then I think the question is back to Tiffany. Does the proposed fee structure, or does the existing fee structure accommodate the new proposed policy?
Yes, so the fee structure is one component of the overall policy. Everything else would remain the same. The only difference really would be what we charge.
So to answer your question, Mayor and Trustee Pacheco, I think the answer is yes, you can pass the policies, the forms, the COVID policy that, and the balance of the package that Tiffany has proposed and put together. But the amendment would include, or the motion would include language that the fee structure remains the same until further considered by the board.
Okay, does that answer your question, Trustee Pacheco?
Yes, I just hope that it will make sense for us. And I don't know if any of the other trustees have any input into that as well.
Why don't
What-
you make your motion and we'll see what happens?
Well, what if I wanted to make a motion and it includes a different film permit fee schedule?
I think that's possible. Do you have something in mind, trustee Lewis?
Yeah, I just, something's just eating at me that they're just a little low. And obviously, we put this new policy in, this procedure in place, and we see how it rolls out, and we can always revisit it. But, you know, I'm leaning towards, you know, making, proposing that, hey, I move for approval of the film policy with the daily fees being, $25, $100, and $200 or something. The permit fee, excuse me.
Why don't you do that?
Okay. Then I would make a motion for approval of resolution number 2021-03-1 with the following change, with the film permit fee for small production being $25, medium production being $100, and large production being $200. And just take that as our starting point.
I need a second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Those are all the changes you want, trustee Lewis?
Yes.
Did we say non-refundable?
I didn't. I feel like I'm stepping, I know they've done a ton of research here. I would like to say that, but I would like to, I know they've done the research. And probably the thing that bothers me the most is just feeling like that the permit fee is low. I think I can live with non-refundable at this time, not being in there.
I think what you've done is correct. I believe it's accurate. Ms. Winter, does that sound okay to you?
Yes, it sounds like he made the appropriate motion.
Ms.
Thank you.
Justice, do you have comments?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Trustee Lewis, Mayor, trustees. I guess the refundable versus non-refundable option, that's something that can also be played with. At this point, all of the fees that are associated are non-refundable. I am open to a motion that would make the film permit fee itself non-refundable. And then based on the actual filming itself, if they need to cancel midway through, they would be prorated the rest of the daily and special fees. Or if
Do you
they
want to
didn't
amend your
filming, they
motion,
would
trustee
still
Lewis?
have the, sorry, yes.
Again, I feel like it's sort of an area that I know how much work they've put into this. And I
Okay.
think that's sort of stepping over my bounds. I don't want them to go, God, don't do that. I think raising the daily permit fee is not a bad thing at this point, but I think I'm stepping a little farther out into hot water without fully understanding all their research as to the refundable or non-refundable issue. So I'm
Okay,
not-
we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any further discussion? Then I'm going to call for the question.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
hold on, please.
Sure.
I'm still struggling with the size of the production at $25 per day. We're gonna have Fred out there on safety. We're gonna have Keen out there. We've got 30 cast and crew plus their vehicles. It's a lot of traffic. And I'm just not sure that we've got this thing covered. It could be a costly endeavor. I'm not sure how we ended up getting to these numbers versus where we were. And I'm with you, trustee Lewis, on understanding that this is not my forte. I don't understand what this is, but it just, from an economic sense, and being able to cover it and take care of our residents, I'm just not sure that it's all there. I'm just struggling with it, how we ended up with the higher schedule plus a processing fee, a permit fee. I think we had Tiffany, can you repeat that again, what we had? Or am I able to ask her questions now?
Yes, Trustee Riccobene, Mayor, trustees. So the original fees that we had was we had a non-refundable processing fee of $500. And then we had a film permit fee of $2,000, a daily fee of $200 each day, and a special permit fee of $500 each day. And the film permit fee, the daily fee, and the special permit fee did have the option to be refundable, prorated for the time that they didn't, I guess, use. The application processing fee was non-refundable. And I guess just to, I think you mentioned Keen and Fred being out on site. That would not be the case for film production permits unless there was a code enforcement complaint, a nuisance complaint, similar to if we got any kind of complaint for a property, we would need to go out there and resolve the issue that is there. Fred, in terms of public safety, if there was a BCSO or BCFD issue, he would also go out there. However, it is in the interest of the film production to not have them go out there. So on the notices, they have their contact information listed first, the film production, so that if there is like a nuisance issue, they can be contacted directly. And then if they aren't resolving the issue for some reason, our numbers are also listed on the permit, or sorry, on the notice. So
Okay.
it would be, I guess, an unfortunate scenario if we were called to the property because something was not being addressed.
Do we have a deadline if a filming production puts in a request and we were to okay their request? Do they have is there a deadline or a window where they've got to begin the production, or can they put a request in for next year sometime and then it remains active under this scenario?
No. So essentially, so film productions don't usually work that far out in advance. Actually, the permits that we've received inquiries on, we tend to get kind of a notice that they're interested in a property about a month in advance, but they're not ready to submit the permit until probably a week or two ahead of filming. And so they don't really plan out ahead something that would be that long term. Plus, what we require on the film permit itself is to know the dates and times that you're going to be active and being on the property. And that is also something that we require to be on the notice to the neighbors. So the policy, the original policy and the possible amended policy are both similar, or exactly the same, in that if you change the dates, you have to renotice. If you change any aspect of what you had originally noticed, you have to renotice.
Is there a maximum date that they can request on that application?
No.
A maximum time frame?
No, there is not.
So they could come in and say, we want to do this in 6 months.
Yes.
Okay. So do we have any, are we able to change our fees or our structure of this once somebody fills it out and is okayed for film production in 6 months? Are we able to make any changes to this in the meantime, or are we pretty much as it stands?
So I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney Winter, but if the permit itself was processed and approved, that would hold no matter whether the board approved a new permit and policy or changed the current policy. If the application was still being processed, I think that would be subject to our interpretation.
You have that correct.
Okay.
Any further questions from the governing body? We have a motion, we have a second. I'm going to call for the question. I'm going to call for the roll call vote. Trustee Rael,
Yes.
trustee Lewis,
Yes.
trustee Pacheco,
Yes.
trustee Riccobeni.
Hey,
Thank you. It passes 3-1. Item 13 is trustee informal discussion. Roundtable discussion is informal. The Board of Trustees will take no official vote or other official action. Trustee Rael.
I just have one thing. A couple of meetings ago, I recall mentioning that the street sign on Sarah Lane and 4th Street was missing. And last week, driving by there, and the sign had been nailed to the tree that's close by. But the sign that's supposed to be on the corner, on the post, the metal post, is not there. So I think it should be replaced. That's all I have.
Thank you. We're going to find out what happened there. Anne, I hope you heard that. Thank you. Okay, trustee Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one item. Something that seems to come up a whole lot is speed humps in streets. And you know, when I first became a trustee, I had some people approach me. And when I went out and learned about it, it was like, oh, you know, you can pretty much get one if you get 75% of the neighborhood to sign a petition. And so that continues to come up. And so I just would like to make a suggestion that maybe something gets put in the village vision that just for neighborhood associations or neighborhoods to understand how speed humps work and what they need to do if they should desire one.
Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, trustee Pacheco.
I don't really have anything in particular. I just feel like we are entering a new phase, and I think we're talking less and less about COVID, which I think we're all happy about. But again, just reminding everybody to be careful and continue, you know, the practices that we've gotten used to, and so that we can see spring and summer and fall and winter again. That's all I have.
Thank you. Trustee Riccobeni.
yes, thank you very much, Mayor and staff and trustees. I appreciate candid discussion that we have and the ability to look at different views. And I think that's what makes for a very solid organization. And once again, you've done a great job as mayor, and staff, again, great job. And I thank the rest of the trustees for the time that they put in. And I just want to say thank you. And that's the kind of dialogue we have to have with each other all the time. Thanks.
I just have one interesting item. As all of you probably have heard on the news, the American Rescue Plan was passed by the US Congress today by the House. The Senate had passed it before. It appears that the Villas of Los Ranchos will get $1.43 million from that plan. We have no further details on that, but it looks pretty good for us to get our fair share. And I have the list of what all the communities are going to get. And so if anybody's interested, you know, we can somehow get that information to you. But this was proposed by the new president. The Congress has passed it. And now it looks like communities all over the United States will be getting benefits from this rescue plan. So that's all I have. So I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 9:23 in the evening. I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you
Good
very
night,
much.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.